I had a really great role model growing up, and that was my abuelita. It was her who showed me the ins and outs of business at that time. She was actually the first entrepreneur that I ever met.
Hello and welcome to The Money Mindset Show, the place where we help female entrepreneurs to transform their mind so that they can achieve financial success in the least amount of time. Here, we talk about subconscious mind, we talk about money mindset shifts, money mindset blocks, a strategy so that you can bypass your own money mindset and increase your income, better your relationship with money, and grow your business. Okay, before we start this episode, hey ladies, especially my women of color, this one is for you. If you are in business and hoping a mindset shift is all you need for financial independence, let me stop you right there. Financial independence isn't a magic switch. It is a process. Every move you make in your business should build on this journey, so that you don't have to waste another year of your life without the result. Forget about getting lost in social media and getting lost in all of the algorithms. Your moves should be working towards a bigger financial picture. That's where we come in. Inside of the Brown Way to Money Academy, we break down how to master money, identity, taxes, retirement, and investments, and how to erase guilt and shame around earning more and keeping more. It is about stacking your revenue step by step until everything fits together beautifully. Picture yourself right now, confidently securing your financial future while embracing abundance and enjoying your family, your kids, your time, being finally free of money worries. It sounds like what you need? Then head over to themoneymindset.com/academy. That is themoneymindset.com/academy and join us. But don't wait, because enrollment closes very soon. Kimberly, thank you so much for being here. It's my pleasure to have you here. We have planned this for a little bit of time, and we kind of have a similar but different point of view on money. So it's good to have a Latina based point of view and see really how broad it is. So welcome to the show.
Yay! And I completely agree. I'm so excited to be here.
Amazing. So let's start by just introducing yourself, who you are, why you do, and since when are you doing you work around energy and spiritual perspective?
Yeah, so I'm a business coach and energy healer for entrepreneurs who want to make more money in magic, doing what they love. And the business coaching and the life coaching, basically the coaching side of things, started in 2018. And the energy healing started coming through the year after in 2019. So it kind of became a very Gemini blend, because I'm a Gemini, so the twins energy, blending the two has definitely been really fun to do since then.
And what is the type of people that you work with?
Yeah, usually women, a lot of women, and especially women who have businesses. And I've noticed too that usually they're different in some way. We have talked a little bit about identity together. So either their parents are not from here, or maybe they're Latina like us, or there's something about them that sets them apart from maybe their family or the mainstream culture that we see in the United States, at least.
Yeah. And that's interesting that you say that, because I feel like first, if we are entrepreneurs, we are different, from everything that we know, right? From most of what we know. And that brings a whole, a structure. It just brings apart, which is one of the things that we work at the Money Mindset Hub with the financial growth programs, how to address that. But I'm curious to know from your perspective and your own personal experience, how that evolution has gone for you because let's just say it, as Latinas, we go to, you gotta study and you gotta do your PhD or double PhD if possible, and then 9 to 5. And and just keep your head down and be grateful and just keep it that way. That's the way that we have been raised, most of us, right? And breaking from that mold is difficult. So how has that been for you in your own experience?
I had a really great role model growing up, and that was my abuelita Blanca Rosa Ruiz de Gonzalez, like really long name, the typical Latino vibe.
Yeah.
But it was her who like showed me the ins and outs of business at that time. She's actually the first entrepreneur that I ever met. And once her kids were all raised, she felt like something was missing, most likely. I never got to ask her these questions. I actually started my business after she passed, but we have a spiritual relationship. And this is the sense that I get from that is that she felt like there was something missing, like in the motherhood journey. Of course, maybe starting a business then might not have been feasible for her. She was a woman born in the 40s in Mexico. It just was different. But I used to ask her questions like, hey, abuela, why do you have these set at like a $2 price point when it costs you like 50 cents, technically? Right. Or like a $10 price point if it costs you $2, or like vice, that kind of game. And she would always say, well, mija, I have to pay myself, my employees, la luz, everything that goes into running a business. And that was my first example of basically, like how to run a profitable, successful business, of like having income, but having the income not just cover your expenses, but then also provide you with a living. So in my probably 10-year-old head, I was like, I guess that makes sense. Like I didn't really get it at the time. But it's something that I always talk a lot about now because pricing is so important to feel expansive about. It's not meant to feel like, oh, I'm just trying to fit in this box of like everybody else is charging this amount, so I should charge this amount. I really think that pricing has to feel like it's expanding you as much as the client. And I think that mindset really did come from my abuelita. And that was such a gift, honestly.
Yeah. I completely agree with you, so much to the point that we have a e-program just designed for pricing because it can make or break your business. It is really the art of pricing. It's how we call it. And if you want to tap into that program, just go to the link below. I'm going to link it, the SPS series. But I love how you come from the line of the point of reference from your grandma to have this entrepreneurship. So do you have the support instead of being like the fear base of, are you sure you want to do that? You're more like, yes, go and start and explore from your family? Or what was the approach when you decided to go for your business?
I think my family is used to me being an unconditional, like, how would you say that, right? Like kind of not fitting in with the rest of society.
Yeah.
They definitely just let me go and fly for the most part. I think they, when anybody starts a business, there's going to be people that are like, hey, like, is this going to work? And so for the first year or so, I think both of my parents were pretty tentative. They're like, like I was living at home with them for the first year. I had my savings from my job previous to that and was like, okay, let's see what I can do. Like if I don't make this work within the year, then I can go back to whatever job. Right. So I think at that point, they probably silently were like, I don't know if this is going to work.
But
They're
okay.
Right. Like I'm so steadfast and headstrong when it comes to what I set my mind. You're probably very similar.
Yeah.
Like once I'm decided, it's like go time. Like there's nobody who's going to stop me. Yeah.
Right. And do you have brothers and sisters or is you?
Yeah. I have one sister.
How was their reaction?
So she's interestingly very supportive and I think has been since the very beginning. She's younger than I am. So I think at the time we had just like traveled a little bit together and really talked about the future and like what she wants to do. And she's actually applying to med school right now. I think it was refreshing to her to see an example of somebody who wasn't going the typical traditional way, because I think that's also something that she was called to. Like she did EMT work and a bunch of other education before applying to med school and didn't go right out of college. And I think in business, like I started right out of college working in a pretty high position for a different organization, but I didn't start my own business right out of college. And I honestly don't know if it would even be still alive today if I didn't have the experience under my belt. before I started. And I think she sees the industry that she's in a very similar way.
So you're kind of like shaping the way. That's, and I don't know if you agree with me or not, but I think that's one of the values that drives us as a Black, as a Latina, really as a woman of color, more than anything. It drives us that we kind of make the model for others. Because I remember, like, both of my parents are what you will call freelancers in United. It's a weird hybrid. Like they work for themselves, but they still need to have like a time clocking in and out. So it's a weird hybrid what they did as an accountant, but it really set the basis for me to go ahead and start my business, even though that their mind wasn't there, right? Because their security with money has always been in find a good job and just go for it. No, let me rephrase that. It has not always been. It was like that. Now it's different, but it was like you should, take care of your job and whatever. But at the same time, it was like you should make something for yourself. So it's like kind of like that middle ground in that how I interpret is more like safety with money is this. So you should follow that. How was safety with money interpreted and taught in your environment, and how different it is from what you teach now?
What a great question. And it's really cool to reflect on that, even probably for your listeners, of like, what was the before and after picture on money, maybe even after listening to this show and all these episodes, which are amazing. Yes, of course. My dad, he's American. He's of German descent, and his parents were babies of the Great Depression, World War II, just kind of very scarcity, like mindset, like kind of penny pinchers, but not in a negative way necessarily. They just like always knew that rainy days could be ahead. Like they just had that kind of foresight.
Right.
They lived through, right. Yeah. And they're like, well, it's probably good if we have like a stack of cash to sit on in the case that something like that happens again. And I think there's value in that. There's a place for that, no matter what money mindset you have of like overly abundant, and just like there's more where that came from. And even with that in your mindset and in your energy set, it is still possible to have those practical practices, basically, of saving, investing, and doing well by your money. So my dad is one of those people who like eats everything off their plate because his parents told him to. Like it was like, eat all the food that you serve yourself or that we serve you. That's kind of, and I think that the energy around food is somehow in some ways linked to the energy that we have around money, right? So is there going to be enough? Like, should I eat this now? It's kind of like, right, like there's some money/food mindset stuff to go into if you feel like you were raised in a similar family dynamic potentially. For me, I think my dad was careful to just like pass that on to us. Although he did make sarcastic comments sometimes that my sister and I would take for serious, like for real.
Right.
She saw like a bill back in the day in like the early 2000s, like, oh, this is how much it cost to like do the electricity for our house. And it was probably like hundreds of dollars, if not like 1,000 or so for the month. I don't know. But I think she remembers seeing at least $1,000. She was like, Dad, how are we going to pay that amount? Like, do we have that amount? Because like as a little kid, that's a lot. They just give me $20 like twice a year.
Right.
So she's thinking that we're going broke because he's like, yeah, this will definitely break the bank. She actually believed him.
Right.
So I don't think we picked up necessarily the Great Depression vibes in terms of what they talked about or the practices that they had. But maybe energetically, I think we picked up on that a little bit. Plus comments like that always affect children a lot more because they have no control. That being said, my dad was very well off. Always, he's a tenured professor in engineering, just kind of always had our backs in terms of finances or anything like that as we grew up. So much so that my mom could stay home with us a lot of the time or go back to work if she wanted to. Like it was kind of her choice. So a lot of the money stuff came from my mom, who, similar to my abuelito and my abuelita, they, I guess with the Mexican peso versus the US dollar, there was a lot more of like, oh my God, that's so much money in Mexico, like stuff like that, right? So
right.
I think there was a little bit of, for me at least, feeling like maybe there wasn't going to be enough. Like I felt like the energy of that, like we would go to Goodwill, for example, to get clothes, which is a very economic and eco-friendly choice. But at the time, I was like, can we just go to like Limited Too or like Abercrombie, which was the thing at the time, or whatever, and not get used clothing? But I thought that we didn't have enough money. So like there's certain practices like that I think my mom was very scrappy and brought in like La Mexicana energy, you know, that made us believe that maybe we were worse off than we were. I think overall, we never felt like we had to find our next meal or anything like that, which was really helpful because I know that in a lot of cases, that's not the scenario.
Yeah. Hey, interrupting this episode to remind you that you can go right now to themoneymindset.hub.com/academy. That is themoneymindset.hub.com/academy and get into the Brown Way to Money Academy, the only program that is going to teach you how to design and walk your path to financial independence as a woman of color in business starting today. Go to themoneymindset.hub.com/academy before we close enrollment. That is so interesting to hear because I'm wondering here, what is the money story of your mom that passed through that as well, right? And it's such a valid point when we have family on Latin American countries and they're always doing the conversion. So I mean, of course, it is always expensive. And of course, it's a lot of more money because purchasing power of each currency is different, right? But the perceived value and the opinion from that perceived value is what really gets it. And what you said to the point of going into the shops or the Goodwill and seeing all of these dynamics, it's a money story that marks the way that you process information later on. And it is not really a conscious decision. Cannot imagine your mom saying, we're going to the Goodwill because I'm going to teach you this. No, we're just going to the Goodwill, right? Europeans here in the Netherlands, second-hand shop is normal. Is the most normal thing that you could do. Like here, they have a website that is called Marktplaats. I think 99% of the country uses Marktplaats. And it's just like, well, we don't use it anymore. You sell it and then somebody else is buying it and there are good stuff. And it has nothing to do with the level of money that you have. It has nothing to do with anything other than people use secondhand stuff for whatever reason, which when I started to live here, I was like, why are we going to buy secondhand? Like, why? You got it at the store. But at the same time, well, you got it secondhand. What would you buy it at the store? So it's the same argument too. It doesn't necessarily mean anything about your financial situation unless you make it about that. And that is what is interesting about all of the money narratives, is always talking about from the point of view that you have and that you have created. I'm curious to know now, when you work with structuring a business, how do you see it and how different it is from if you're coming from that spiritual perspective? How different it is from what you see out there in the market? Because I know in my case, for financial growth specifically, I'm very spiritual, but I don't combine spirituality on my work, but I do combine the two other parts, which is the emotional side of money and the mental, the mindset perspective. And that is way different than what it is out there. It is what I believe it is necessary to have real change. How have you witnessed that on your business?
I think it's really interesting to be out there as a spiritual entrepreneur because there's a lot of people like yourself who are spiritual, have a business, but are really, really nervous and they feel like a call, right? Like you have to feel a call to bring it into your business in some way. Like some people have their spirituality just for themselves and they keep that private and, you know, maybe they have gifts or, right, like they have certain practices. And I think that's great. You know, if you know that that's just for you, wonderful.
Right.
But what I tend to see is a lot of people, especially women, who are really, really feeling the call to come out of the spiritual closet in a professional sense, not even just the personal sense. Because you can tell your friends, I'm like, oh, I have a connection with people who have passed on, or, oh, I pull cards every day, or, oh, I feel like I was a medicine woman in a past life, or whatever it is. You can come out of the closet, the spiritual closet, with your friends, and that's still a big deal in some friend circles. So that's a big step. It was for me, at least. I felt like it was a natural step. It wasn't met with any sort of rebuttal or resistance, but it was a big thing for me to come clean about.
Right.
And then the next step for me, I knew was, all right, like we have to come out of the spiritual closet in the professional sense, in the business sense too, and merge what I do like on my own or with private clients that I feel like, oh, maybe like energy healing might be a good fit at this time. I'll merge it in those spaces, but being public about it and like having YouTube channel stuff and like all these other emails and, things out there, right, for the public to see, or media articles or whatever it is. It's interesting to see how many people feel like that's somehow permission for them to speak about it in a normalized way as well. Like, for example, I don't say things like woo woo. I think that kind of diminishes the power and the abilities of a lot of people who have been gifted with, for whatever reason, just like the ability to channel or the ability to heal or the ability to sense things that maybe other people don't. I think at this point, I'm on a mission to normalize spirituality within the entrepreneurship space. And I think that money, marketing, sales, design, like web design or branding, all of it has a spiritual component to it, whether people realize it or not. And for those of us that feel called to be front and center with the spirituality, plus whatever else you bring to the table, I say, we need more of us out here.
Right.
Get out here and be visible, And I know that's easier said than done.
Right. Because it's a huge part of your identity, right? It's like, I am a spiritual. You are describing part of who you are. So it's like you're part of your identity, and that always causes fear. How it has been the reaction, how it has been what is the word that I'm looking for? I got the word in Spanish for some reason. Received. Yeah, that's the word. So how it has been received within your close community, but also within the media, because you do a lot of media, and within broader community, this coming from with the spiritual gifts and business structure.
With the close community, with people who were already working with me, it was like a breath of fresh air. They're like, of course. Like they already had experienced a lot of cases, and it was just like a no-brainer for people who were already working with me. For people who are new to me, usually they'll be either curious about it or will be asking me like, how are you so, like, how do you do that? Like how, because I think, and this actually from one of my former clients, I remember her saying just has a lot of throat stuff, like blockages around being super vocal about certain spirituality things. And she thinks that comes from a past life. It's interesting to see where we get stuck when we're seeing like an example of what could be. And so in those cases, I like to bring them along the ride in terms of like, okay, like, let's just like talk about it. Maybe you can like pitch this podcast and just have a conversation with the host about it, or like just very like easy toe dipping, or maybe you go on Instagram live with a fellow, spiritual entrepreneur, or even someone who's not spiritual. Like I remember in the beginning, I was doing a lot of stuff with an astrologer friend of mine, a human design friend of mine, and just like having conversations and letting people in on it. And with the media, I think it's really important to package the spirituality, depending on the media outlet, to package it into the article in a way that still fits the mainstream audience. Because a lot of media outlets that we know and love that have been around for hundreds, at least decades, right? Like there's maybe Cosmopolitan has been around for almost maybe 200 years, but we have to package it in a way that makes sense to the reader of that audience. And so whatever article or headlines you're thinking of, it's important to see, okay, like what am I actually trying to, like what's the goal of the article? And in what way can I package it to make it seem like your typical article, but then to add some spirituality mechanics within the article. And of course, if you have a media outlet like Well and Good, or they're more likely to be like, like
spirituals. Yeah.
Right. So it really depends on which outlet you're going for, but you really have to think about, okay, the audience type? How can I make this accessible to the reader of this media outlet's audience? And that's probably the most important part of getting featured when you're a spiritual entrepreneur.
Yeah, amazing. And I'm going to close this with the one question of, as a CEO, Latina CEO, what is one insight that you want everybody to know about running a business and being successful at it?
Stay in the game, baby. Stay in the game. Yeah. Because I think people sometimes quit a little too soon. When I decide I'm in it, like I'm steadfast, headstrong. And yes, there's amazing days and then maybe not so amazing days. And that's part of the magic of entrepreneurship is you're in the ship. There's nowhere to go. You're out in the ocean. Let's see what happens while you're out at sea and ride the waves as they come, right? There will be tiny waves. There'll be big waves. There'll be everything in between. And the only thing that you need to do is stay on the ship, stay in the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you get to wherever your destination is on the other side.
Okay. But before I let you go, did you know that you have a space where your money mindset work is made extra simple so that you can increase your income, better your relationship with money, and grow your business in such a simple and easy way? Go to themoneymindset.hub.com and choose your path and start making those changes easily and effortlessly. That is themoneymindset.hub.com.